everybody. I'm Charlie Tolhurst, and welcome to Charlie Tolhurst Show for the 25th of June, live on YouTube tonight. And yes, it is a busy show tonight. We did start slightly later than scheduled, but of course, all I can say is we're still on air tonight with all the latest news, gossip, and chat about the world of politics, sport, and so much more, including also later on in the show a look at tomorrow's newspaper headlines. I'm joined by Labour Party supporter Zach James to run all the latest news from the past week. Hello, Zach.
Hello, Charlie. Hello, mate.
Right, Zach. Probably, I'm going to say the most interesting news we've had in quite some time.
Oh, certainly.
Start the show off with. We're going to start off with, I think, the by-election results first in the UK, because the Tories this week, the Conservative Party, have had an absolute disaster in the by-elections. Wakefield is now Labour. I think Tiverton also went to the Liberal Democrats as well. I know the Labour and Lib Dems did win some council by-elections this week. By the way, guys, actually, I don't even think the council by-elections. I think these are for constituencies.
Yeah.
So this is big news. And Boris Johnson, just the other day, yesterday even, lost one of his biggest and closest aides yet. Oliver Dowden resigned as the Conservative Party chairman just yesterday. And of course, this news will potentially put mounting pressure on the Prime Minister to resign from number 10. I have to say, Zach, in my view, I think the party's over for Boris right now. He just doesn't look very strong like he used to. He looks weak now.
Oh, yeah, certainly about it, Charlie. I totally agree about that as well. But yes, this was two by-elections, Charlie, to replace two Conservative MPs who resigned or basically across the last few months. So we had two by-elections to cover those seats yesterday. One of them was Wakefield, which was a Red Wall seat that was won by the Conservatives in 2019 as part of the Red Wall. And the other two was Tiverton and Hoverton, which is the 30th safest Tory seat in the country, Charlie. Well, that was until Thursday, until the early hours of Friday morning, Charlie. First of all, let's start with Wakefield, Charlie, because I think that's where the result came first. Wakefield went Labour. Simon Lightwood is the new MP for Wakefield, overturning a 5,000 loss there to do a 5,000, nearly 6,000 win there. It was a swing of 12%, Charlie, in the vote in Wakefield. So Labour have regained that seat, a seat they lost in 2019 from the Conservatives to Labour once again, Charlie. It's a bit. It just shows you something, Charlie. Well, that turnout was down. That's typical for a by-election, no doubt about it. I think it was at 39% turnout in Wakefield. Although it was that at the end of the day, Charlie, the Labour Party candidate got the most votes, and Simon Lightwood was the winner, Charlie, and Labour regained the seat off the Conservatives. The biggest shock, though, I have to say, Charlie, was certainly Tiverton and Hoverton. As I said, Charlie, that was the 30th safest seat, Conservative seat in the country, Charlie. And they have had a majority there, I think, of 27,000 to 30,000, Charlie, as well. That's Tory, there we go, 24,239. They had a majority there. The Lib Dems was behind them on, I think, like 27,000, something like that, Charlie.
Yeah.
And the Lib Dems did I have to say, sensational local ground operation there, Charlie, to be able to win that seat back. Obviously, this is the seat of the former MP Neil Parish, who resigned after looking up tractors, although it's not those sort of tractors up online, Charlie, unfortunately. So, yeah, that was a huge swing, Charlie. And I have to say, Charlie, this obviously gives a clear warning. They've lost a seat in the red wall, Charlie. They've lost a seat in the blue wall. This is serious business now for the Conservatives, Charlie. Because if you're losing seats like the 30th seat in the country, 30th safest Tory seat in the country, there's going to be a lot of people in Cornwall and Devon, Tory MPs, who are going to be absolutely right off their shoes now, Charlie. Coastal towns are starting to trend leftwards. the rural areas are trending sort of into centre, Charlie, rather than right. It's interesting, Charlie. And if Tory MPs in those blue wall seats, those middle class, wealthy areas, Charlie, are going to have to start worrying about their seats. If you lose the 30th safest seat in the country, Charlie, then you are screwed, basically, if it comes to a general election. The 30% swing from Conservatives to Liberal Democrats is incredible, Charlie. Absolutely incredible. And it just showed the disdain on the doorstep for Boris Johnson in Wakefield, Charlie, and in Tiverton, Honiton. It showed it's a complete meltdown, Charlie. Some people blame, not everyone's united behind the Prime Minister. It looks like the public hate the Prime Minister. There's no doubt about it. They can't trust him. They feel like he's out of touch. And it's having an effect, Charlie. This is not the normal midterm blues, as some would say. You don't lose seats that you've won by like nearly 25,000 in 2 years, Charlie. Because that's the case. I know there's like low turnout, but if that's the case, there is something wrong with you. There is something wrong with the Conservative Party, this attitude of midterm blues. Because if it is midterm blues, then they're going to really lose the next election, Charlie, in 2 years' time. If this is the case, they're totally out of touch at the moment. And look. I mean, look at the constituencies, Charlie. This is the how much they earn. This is the rate of people claiming unemployment. It's slow in Tiverton. The weekly paid higher, the percentage population over 65. This is the Tory demographic, Charlie. The 27.9% is over 65. So this is the demographic that the Tories normally win. The fact that losing to Liberal Democrats and their obviously house prices are big as well. There is some big problems, Charlie. If the trends go in their direction based on these statistics in genres, Charlie, then they're going to get a hell of a beat in the next election if they're losing the red wall, Charlie, and the blue wall at the same time.
Zach, I have to say, obviously going on your assessment of the results, I think the biggest problem that Boris Johnson faces, and this is a big one here, is pressure from his own MPs, but also as well pressure on more by-elections, because frankly, if Conservative Party candidates keep standing down, the party's going to get weaker and weaker and weaker. And that's an issue for the Conservative Party, because if that happens, you then have potential to see opposition parties start winning some of these key areas. Look at round here in Essex, okay? Most of it's Conservative. Basildon, Southend, Castle Point, just to be exact, they're all Conservative still. They still hold these areas. But you kind of now feel, with the resignation of Oliver Dowden being obviously a huge loss to the Prime Minister. I mean, Zach, with Oliver Dowden going, do you think Boris Johnson is in probably his biggest trouble yet?
Well, he's lost the key ally, Johnson has, to Oliver Dowden. He has lost a key ally, no doubt about it. Oliver Dowden is basically was the chairman, so he's running these elections, Charlie. And clearly he felt it right that he needs to resign. Because his management of by-elections has been pretty poor, to be fair, Charlie. He's been losing these seats. He keeps losing, and he's obviously given up to this point, Charlie, as well. And losing, as I said, losing Oliver Dowden is a massive loss, Charlie, no doubt about it, for Boris Johnson, because Oliver Dowden has been there since pretty much the start of his leadership campaign. When Johnson decided to run for leadership in 2019, he was there all the way. And the fact that it came to this, Charlie, is extremely worrying. This is a key area that Oliver Dowden was normally good at, and the fact he's had to resign tells you much. I mean, he was pretty bad at the role anyway. If you think about it, Charlie, he wasn't a good culture secretary. He's not a good chairman. He's obviously clear about that. As well. So there is huge shoes to fill now, Charlie. No doubt about it. And I'm afraid it's until the public trust Boris Johnson in the game. If they're going to be by-elections coming up, Charlie, which doesn't look like it at the moment, if there's going to be by-elections in Tory seats like Tiverton, the Tories are going to end up losing that if they're not careful, Charlie. And I'll give you an example somewhere. I want to give you an example of Essex, Charlie, because Colchester's an example where if, let's say, the MP suddenly resigned there, Charlie, if the MP resigned, there would be a by-election. I could easily see that flipping from Tory to one of the other seats. I don't know about potentially, say, Chonks as well, if they, like Vicky Ford, decided to got involved in a scandal, had to resign. That seat could go Liberal Democrat quite easily, Charlie, given the demographics of it. I mean, like Colchester's trending leftwards because it's a nice sort of student town, university town, Charlie. So yeah, it's a huge worry, no doubt about it, as well. So the Tories do not want to hope that any more by-elections happen, Charlie, because if not, then they're going to be losing more and more seats if Boris Johnson's approvals does not go up, Charlie, and the Conservative Party do not get their act together.
No, as well as that, Zach, I agree with you. They're in trouble. I think it's clear to me that the other parties are looking very likely to secure big wins in some areas. Keep an eye out, guys, for Essex, just in case by-elections do appear, because obviously, if we have to do a by-election, there's a chance I'm hopefully going to be voting soon. And to be honest with you, I don't even know what I'm going to be voting for at the moment anyway, because the Conservatives are doing so bad. I've hearing reports on the news, some people actually up in Wakefield actually went to Liberal Democrats instead of Labour. Interesting. So I wonder
Charlie,
how that happened.
I want to add as well that there was a lot of tactical voting. So you would find that people that were normally Liberal Democrat in, say, Wakefield would have voted Labour. And those the Labour, right, okay, who normally vote Labour in Tiverton, lended their votes to Liberal Democrats to get to the Tory MP, to unseat the Tory MP. So there's been a lot of tactical voting, Charlie, that has influenced some of who votes to which MPs. I mean, the Lib Dem sources on Thursday morning, before on the day of the by-election, were saying that they had a lot of Conservative switches, but also a lot of Labour people coming to vote for them as well. So that's really important, Charlie. That tactical voting is going to be a key factor in whatever by-election comes up next, if there's any. I mean, in general election, tactical voting may come in handy, potentially in the future. We don't expect any by-elections, to be fair, Charlie, at the moment, in terms of Westminster as well. Obviously, you will be only able to vote if it's in the by-election in your constituency, Charlie. But nevertheless, that's one of the key features, Charlie. I've noticed the tactical voting it's well enlarged, Charlie, as well, because people keep an eye on the polls and people keep an eye on the mood just to get a certain MP out of the area.
Yeah, so be very clear, guys. Keep up to date with all the elections stuff. We'll continue. If there's any more, we'll continue to update you guys on that via our Twitter pages. Now, moving on to some big news on the other side of the Atlantic now, in the United States. The US abortion has been a big part of the news as Roe versus Wade has been overturned in the United States, leading to huge protests across the country to do with this. Zach, what do you make to this news in America?
Well, I have to say, Charlie, I think we had this expectation since that leak came out a few months ago from Politico. There was a high expectation that this moment of Roe v. Wade being overturned and a national right to abortion being overturned, it felt like it was happening, because it felt like it was on its way. And it was just a sense of anxiety, Charlie. And yesterday, we did get the ruling officially that there was a 6-3 decision to uphold not only the Mississippi law, Charlie, where they wanted a 15-week abortion ban, but they also overturned something of a constitutional principle, Charlie, that normally, is enshrined into the Constitution, aka a right to an abortion, aka Roe v. Wade, Planned Parenthood versus Casey. So that's been overturned, Charlie. And what this means is there's no longer a national right to abortion. The matter now goes to the local states now, Charlie. And some states have trigger laws, which means once Roe v. Wade gets overturned, abortion is immediately banned, Charlie. Take Alabama, for example. They had a law that allowed some abortions, but once Roe v. Wade got overturned, there's now been a total criminalization of abortion. And in some cases, Charlie, clinics were having to cancel abortion appointments when this ruling was dropped. There was, I think it was Planned Parenthood had to cancel thousands of appointments in Mississippi for patients because of the rule change. And in Alabama now, Charlie, it's now a felony of potentially, I think it's life in prison if a person does an abortion, or a woman, I should say, because I'm going to get outraged if people say person. A woman has an abortion, and that's worth either 10 years or a life in prison. If that would be the provider, that would be the person that's taken, the woman that's taken it. I mean, for me, Charlie, I think it's downright outrageous that this has happened. But the Supreme Court has allowed this to happen. And it's thanks to Donald Trump's extremist conservative appointments that have allowed this to happen, Charlie. I feel very sorry for millions of women who no longer have control of their body in some states, Charlie. It's being dictated to by some local politicians now, rather than the woman that has the right, to have an abortion. They're now being controlled by men politicians, for example, that sign legislation banning abortion into law, Charlie. It's a terrible, terrible day for America. It's a whole women's rights have gone back hundreds of years, unfortunately, Charlie. And I have to say the winners of this, Charlie, I know it sounds really grim when I say this. The winners of yesterday's decision, Charlie, are wealthy men who can afford pregnancies. And I cannot believe I have to say this, but I do have to say this. The winners of yesterday's ruling, Charlie, are rapists. Because what can happen now, Charlie, is a rapist, for example, in Texas, can go around, rape a woman and get her pregnant. She can't have an abortion because there's no exception for rape or incest. And the rapist can just sue her, how is that even allowed? How we even got to this place, Charlie? I cannot believe, as a man, Charlie, I cannot believe what men have done to women. It is shocking. It's sad. It's desperate. And it's quite stunning that a number of politicians have basically the same view on position on women's rights as the Taliban in Afghanistan. No, I'm being serious when I say that. It's terrible, Charlie. We're now going to have politicians dictating how a woman can control their body. And trust me, Charlie, it ain't going to end there. Clarence Thomas, you may have seen yesterday in his writing on the court ruling, also talked about certain previous conventional laws, Charlie, such as the right to gay marriage, the right to contraception. You ain't going to end there, Charlie. If Republicans get power in the United States, again, I say within 2 to 4 years, Charlie, they will make it. I think what they will do is try to put in a nationwide abortion ban, which they'll try to do. So the places that will have abortions, they'll be banned. I mean, you'll see commentators like Tucker Carlson say, well, if you want abortion, go to California. If Tucker Carlson gets his way, people in California won't be able to have a ban or have to have an abortion if he gets his way. And I'm just stunned, Charlie. I'm just stunned about how backwards human rights are going in America. It tells you something, Charlie, when the United States Supreme Court can loosen the rights for people to hold guns, yet they tighten the rights for how a woman is able to, for body autonomy, the right to hold a baby, Charlie. It's quite stunning, really, Charlie. And what the court says happened here is extremist conservative judges, Charlie, have been put on the court for political purposes to impose their own religious extremism across the country and rule over everybody else, Charlie. It doesn't feel like the land of the free anymore. It feels like the land of the far right. I'm sorry to say that, Charlie. It really does.
Is the Trump judge still in there? Amy Coney Barrett. She might have been one of the ones.
There's 3 Trump judges on there, Charlie, that ruled. All 3 of those Trump judges ruled in favour of abolishing Roe v. Wade, Charlie. That is. People were warned, and I think they didn't know what was coming. Trump knew what he was doing when they put these judges on. He wasn't there to like put judges on that just follow the Constitution, Charlie, and just rule of law. He put on judges that follow their own political agenda. And this is what's happened. United States Supreme Court basically making law and presiding power, sitting 6 powerful men, basically, Charlie, and 1 woman, by the way. 5 men, 1 woman, providing power over hundreds of millions of people in the United States, Charlie. It's pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. And it's an absolute horror day for women now. We don't know what their future is, what they can do when they're pregnant in the future, Charlie.
Well, please, guys, comment down below what you think of the changes to Roe v. Wade. I'd like to hear what you think about that. Obviously, on this show, free speech is always welcomed. We will answer any questions that we'll have. But carrying on with the live stream of Charlie Tolhurst Show on YouTube tonight, there's so much news to get through. We're going to start off now by talking about the current Russian invasion of Ukraine, now entering, wait for it, 4 months. Oh my goodness. 25th of June, we are now 4 months into the war, and some big news coming out from Russian propagandists and Russian state television. Oh my goodness, if you ask me this, that they plan to, and I quote this now, bomb London if they go to war with NATO. Well, can I just say, Zach, I think a lot of that's fake news.
Yes, if the Russians says they're going to do that, Charlie, that means they're not. Let's put that on the record now, because they all pretty much lie about everything. So if they say they're going to do that, it's proper disinformation ruling crap, Charlie. It really is. I really wouldn't believe that sort of thing. But let me tell you what is to be believed today, Charlie, and it's rather significantly bad news, Charlie, for Ukraine, because today Russia have now taken over the eastern city of Severodonetsk, Charlie. This was in the bag. It was 50-50 of whether this was going to happen, Charlie, for the last few weeks, because there was intense fighting on the ground and in the air in Severodonetsk, Charlie, for quite a few weeks now. But it's now become the unfortunate case that Severodonetsk is now under Russian control, Charlie, full Russian control. We knew parts of it was under Russian control, but now it's all of it, Charlie. Olesko Strakos, the regional leader in Severodonetsk, said the Russians have fully occupied Severodonetsk. Our military has retreated to more prepared positions, Charlie. So, yeah, that is very bad news for Ukraine, Charlie. They've lost Mariupol. They have now lost a strategic area of Severodonetsk, Charlie. It's not a good area, Charlie. It's home to 100,000 people. It was once home to 100,000 people. It's now gone. They've now taken the city. I mean, much of now controls nearly all the Luhansk region and much of the name Donetsk, the 2 regions that form the Donbass area as well. They also control the Severodonetsk suburb of Stroytine and 2 small towns just south of it, Voroinovy, Boriskvy, Ski as well, Charlie. The good news is the Ukraine military said it's repelled Russian attacks to the southwest of Lysychansk.
Yeah,
but nevertheless, Charlie, it's not very good to see that Severodonetsk, Charlie, has gone down basically to Russian forces. That is not good. Nevertheless, Charlie, and it's been quite a difficult week for Ukraine. Nevertheless, Charlie, there's been a lot of areas. Their targets have been shelled, destroyed.
The Azot chemical plant as well the other day in Severodonetsk got quite badly attacked by Russian forces. I saw lots of bombings of what they'd done in Mariupol to the Azovstal steel plant. It's a similar thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a similar thing, Charlie, where they've been going off that steel plant for quite a while now, Charlie. But that's the area we've been shedding. And yeah, they've caused significant damage to that area. But as I said, Charlie, Severodonetsk is now under Russian control. And strategically, that's a big loss for Ukraine. It's a win for Russia as well for them. So yeah, not good in their week for Ukraine, Charlie. I think what they need to do now is really gather their forces back together and to recover now, Charlie. Let's look through some of the other news as well, Charlie. Yeah, so as you said, the Ukrainian forces were retreated as well from Severodonetsk. The European Council has approved £9 billion of financial aid to Ukraine. That's good news as well. The Russia have also been upset this week because the European Union have now accepted Ukraine and Moldova as candidates for the European Union. That's significant, Charlie. They're candidates, means they're not fully members of the European Union yet. They need to meet a certain amount of targets, a certain amount of areas such as crime, justice, corruption, to be able to fully become a member of the European Union, Charlie. I'm sure there'll be no negotiations from that point of view. But Russia have obviously not happy about it. Tough luck, unfortunately, Russia. But yeah, that's good news on that front as well. More than 3,000 dolphins in the Black Sea have died. That's actually a sad story, to be fair, Charlie. Old dolphins being caught up in the war. It's not just humans I see; it's animals now, unfortunately. And Melitopol, there's been some kidnappings, Charlie, in Melitopol in the southeastern Ukrainian city. There's been more than 500 have been abducted in the last 4 months. Wow. War crimes, certainly, Charlie, no doubt about it, as well. And 70 missiles have been launched at Odessa since February the 24th, as well, Charlie. But yeah, tough week for Ukraine, no doubt about it.
And it gets in the more news on Ukraine as well, because I heard today that Vladimir Putin said the other day that he threatens, like he's planning on wanting to launch his Sarmat 2 ballistic missile by the end of the year. That's what he reckons will get himself into power for a nuclear war. The thing is, Zach, though, he had a conference the other day with the Chinese Prime Minister, President Xi, who slammed countries, the West, imposing sanctions on Russia. But there's also been a lot of news from Kaliningrad lately, where Russia have been slapped with sanctions over transports of goods to Lithuania.
Yeah, no doubt there's been this row, Charlie, over transport goods as well, where I think they've tried to get transport. The Lithuania have stopped them traveling goods from Russia to Lithuania, Charlie. The Lithuania have accused the Russians of lying about a rail blockade in its territorial output of Kaliningrad, Charlie. It's near to the Baltic Sea, and it uses a rail link to Russia via Lithuania for passengers and freight. They banned the transport of steel and other ferrous metals under EU sanctions, Charlie. And the Russians basically flipped out and said it was unacceptable as well. The Lithuanian Prime Minister basically said that travellers were free to go over Lithuanian territory from Russia. But any goods is not allowed, Charlie, because of the sanctions as well. I mean, fair enough for Lithuania. I mean, it's clear to me that countries are coming to support Charlie. I mean, I think Ben Wallace just expressed his support and coming over. The supporters of the blockade of goods as well coming from Russia to Lithuania, Charlie. I mean, I think it's the right decision as well.
It's an interesting one to say that, Zach, because the war in Ukraine is getting worse now, and I think Putin's clearly not giving up. He's going for the full Tonto, as Ben Wallace called it. Yeah, he's going for the full powerhouse now. I thought this could have been solved. I thought there could have been diplomatic talks. It's not. They're still going after Ukraine, and yeah, not ending anytime soon, if you ask me. Moving on now to another bit of news. I'm going to touch on the sport briefing very quickly now. There isn't actually that much sports news to round up. So I'm going to go over some sports news whilst we're here now and talk about the latest news from the Cup Series NASCAR race. Actually, no, should I say Cup Series race? There wasn't a Cup Series race. But we did have a Truck Series race, which I watched the last few laps on, and Ryan Prix winning that one at Nashville.
Yes, right. It was Charlie. Right. There was obviously kind of two things that happened since we talked last week, Charlie, because there was a race in Knoxville. That was the only race last week, Charlie, where Todd Gilliland run that race ahead of Joe Nemechek and Zane Smith. And last night, Charlie, there was the I think if I can, where was I? There we go. Ryan Prix winning the Truck Series race last night at Nashville, Charlie. It's where NASCAR is this weekend. Ryan Prix won that. Zane Smith finished second as well. Carson Hovcar was a third, and Ty Majeski was fourth. Stuart Friedman was fifth, Charlie. As well, sixth was Christian Eccles.
Tyler Ankrum was seventh.
As well. Max Gutierrez was eighth. John Hunter Nemechek was ninth. And as well, and Matt Crafton was in 10th position, Charlie. As well in that race. It was quite an interesting race as well, Charlie. It was it was a good final lap, I have to say, Charlie.
Yeah, I watched the final lap. I saw some very close racing.
Yeah, very close racing, no doubt about, Charlie. Ty Gibbs winning managed to get ahead by a second at the end of the day, Charlie. He did. That's actually that's the national race. The Xfinity race is going on national at the moment. It's actually Ty Gibbs that is leading at the moment, from what I'm seeing. That's going on now. It's on lap 94, 188. I noticed the end of NASCAR Cup Series qualifying was rained off, Charlie, because there was a big rainstorm at the end of the qualifying, just before they went to the fast. I think it was the fast 10 actually, and I think they abandoned that at the end of the day. Let me go to the Cup. Yeah, so here we go. It's Denny Hamlin that's on the pole. Before they didn't get the second round, unfortunately, but it was Denny Hamlin that was on the pole for that one, ahead of Joey Logano, Carl Larson third, Chase Elliott fourth, Daniel Suarez fifth, Ryan Blaney sixth, Chastain seventh, Harvick eighth, Christopher Bell ninth. That's the grid for tomorrow, which is at 10 p.m. UK time, Charlie, tomorrow. The Xfinity race is currently ongoing right now. At the moment, but obviously after this, I believe they're going to be racing at Tokyo. Oh no, Road America. Sorry, Charlie.
Road America, yeah.
Next week, it's on July the 4th. The July weekend. It's normally Independence Day weekend, as well. So yeah, that would be quite something that good, nice special weekend as well. But yeah, so the Cup Series race is tomorrow, and the Xfinity Series race is currently ongoing.
Yeah, also just a few updates on where the NASCAR's ahead after that. So we go to the Alley 400 at Nashville tomorrow. Then we head to the NASCAR Cup Series race at Road America. I think that's the Jockey Made in America 250, I think, or 350. That's at Road America. We then have the Quaker State 400 by Walmart, or presented by Walmart. That's on 10th of July. Foxwood Resort Casino 301 at Sunday, 17th of July. I think that race last year might have been won by Aric Almirola, I think. So shout out to him, won that race. Then we have NASCAR Cup Series meeting in Pocono. Wonder what that one will be called. And then the 31st of July, we have the Big Machine Vodka 400 at the Brickyard, presented by, you guessed it, Florida Georgia Line, who is a rapper. Takes place on the 31st of July, 2022. More action on NASCAR will be available on the show next weekend with more analysis on that. Moving on now to, let's go to Formula One now, because I want to talk about Formula One a bit now, because been some changes now on the new rules on porpoising. Now, the FIA have released new rules on how porpoising must be adapted to, and these rules are meant to reduce the effects of cars bouncing around on the circuits. Now, a lot of team bosses, Christian Horner being one of the bosses of Red Bull, critical of Mercedes for saying that their car needs to be sorted out themselves rather than getting the FIA to intervene. So what do you make to the porpoising situation in F1 at the moment?
So I think this has been applied the next race, Charlie. But obviously, I welcome the fact that porpoising is now being looked at in some ways. I think it's for what I think the balance that the FIA have got, Charlie, is right on this, because what they're doing is they're measuring porpoising and getting a little data charge to see what the ride height of the car should be. But then they're leaving up to the teams to fix the problems, Charlie, which I actually think the FIA have got the right balance in here. So they put in some minor regulations, but also left it to the teams to fix it, Charlie. They, under a technical delegative as well, I should point out. And I welcome the fact that this has been put in place, because what this does, Charlie, it doesn't disadvantage those who've managed to fix porpoising, Charlie, or not totally fix it, but control it in some ways, as well. But what it does make sure is the likes of what it does disadvantage, I should say, is the likes of Mercedes and Ferrari, because they've basically had a few issues with porpoising, Charlie, throughout the season, much more than the Red Bulls have. And it's going to disadvantage them in performance-wise, because they're going to have to raise the ride height potentially at Silverstone. It would use to, because obviously this data that gathering the FIA, Charlie, they might do a further clampdown at future races, Charlie. The question is whether what course the FIA is going to take control, and it remains to be open. There's going to be a technical directive meeting for the British Grand Prix. But I think in fairness, Charlie, as I said before, I sort of think the FIA have got the balance right, because they've put in measures, but they've also told the teams, right, you fix the porpoising, or you're going to have to raise the ride height, which obviously then affects the performance of a car, Charlie. So I think they've got this right. I don't see why the Red Bull are whinging about some of the changes, because actually it could be advantage them to some factor, Charlie. The only thing that could disadvantage it is cars like Ferrari and Red Bull. Ferrari and Mercedes, where Mercedes' performance has been awful throughout the season, Charlie, and they've not been able to control it as much as Red Bull have managed to find a fix. And it's their problem to find it, Charlie, I think. So, yeah, I do support the balance the FIA has done.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, look at Canada, where Lewis Hamilton had to have his floor changed during free practice, because he hated the other floor on the first running on Friday morning, saying it was just so bouncy in his Mercedes W13. So, yeah, it's clear to that. But quick video now that I'm going to play for you guys is what an analysis from WTF1 on what kind of regulations Formula 1 will adopt to solve porpoising. Have a listen to this.
The FIA have finally decided to step in and change porpoising. There's been so much talk about porpoising again in recent weeks, especially due to what happened at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, where lots of teams and drivers were speaking up about the bouncing and the safety issues this was causing. I didn't even know the term porpoising until this season, and now it's a word I've written 1,000 times. Hopefully with what the FIA is going to do next, we won't have to talk about it again for a very long time. There were plenty of suggestions thrown around to try and combat the porpoising problem, but also a difficult balancing act on how to make it fair. What I mean by this is the FIA can't simply change the rules at this stage of the season because some teams haven't been able to build a car that gets around the issue. That would disadvantage the likes of Red Bull, who seem to have hit the sweet spot this year with the new regulations. So instead, the FIA are going to introduce a closer scrutiny of the planks and skids, both in terms of their design and their observed wear. What this means in terms I can understand, if there is any evidence of the underside of the car bouncing or hitting the ground too aggressively, the FIA could step in and force teams to change their setup and alter the amount of ground clearance on the cars, and even go as far as penalising drivers and teams heavily if they exceed a certain limit. This isn't good news for teams like Mercedes and probably Ferrari too. Try not to cry that. Those cars do love their extreme bouncing. There's more information that the FIA have said, which is around the process of them coming up with a metric or measurement for the amount of porpoising that is actually acceptable. Apparently this metric is still being decided, and the FIA are hoping to work with the teams themselves to come up with a positive solution, but one that is still aimed to be implemented this weekend. The free practice will very much be used for some data gathering for the FIA to trawl through. One of the teams that will likely be affected the most by this is Mercedes. After a bumpy weekend in Azerbaijan causing Lewis Hamilton to struggle to get out of his own car, Mercedes have been very vocal in their criticism of this year's porpoising cars. The moment where Hamilton came over the radio to say that his seat had gone cold most likely alerted a lot of people within the FIA that something needs to be done about this. It was not anything spilling in the 7-time champ's car, but in fact his back going numb from the bouncing. This is dangerous, to say the least. By increasing their scrutineering of the car's skids and planks, the FIA can now effectively force cars to go slower. According to reports, this is in the best interest of the driver's health. However, as the amount of porpoising varies from team to team, this new directive will only really apply to those who have been worst affected. This may well be the end of the dream, Ferrari fans. Although, can we call the races since Australia a dream? Probably not. There you have it, how the porpoising saga has developed once more. What do you make to the FIA's decision? Let us know in the comment section below.
Thank you there to WTF1 for that video on porpoising and why it is causing havoc in F1 at the moment. Okay, let's say Formula One fans think porpoising is an issue that we all have to resolve. We'll find out more next week when the cars and drivers hit the high-speed circuit of Silverstone next weekend. Can't we say, guys, we've got the British Grand Prix back next Sunday. Last year, at turn 9 at Copse Corner, all hell broke loose because Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen both collided, enduring rivalry throughout the whole season, which the Red Bull driver ended up victorious with the crown in Abu Dhabi. So yes, ask me that question. Should the final race have ever finished like that? I don't know. Moving on now to a little bit more sports news. We've had Goodwood Festival of Speed on this weekend. And I just wanted to say to all motorsport fans, there is plenty of car demonstrations going on. Also as well this weekend saw the debut of the brand new Mercedes AMG One Hyper Car. I'm so excited for this, guys. 1,500 horsepower, just over that, from a 1.6 litre V6 hybrid. I can't believe the car has made a debut. Unfortunately, my car is at the moment being repaired. Unfortunately, guys, I did have an accident the other day of a cyclist, so I'm okay myself. But I will be back on the road very soon. That's to say the least. But yes, Mercedes out with a new car. I wish I was up there driving it. But yeah. Claire, what have you made so far of Goodwood Festival Speed?
Yeah, it looks fun, Charlie. We've seen a lot of nice little runs and performances. There's certainly going to be a bit more tomorrow as well. I've also liked to see Nigel Mansell being reunited with one of his, I think there's the old Williams cars.
FW14B, yes.
Yes, as well. It's been quite the highlight of the week. And I believe Mercedes have also bought this, not only the car as well, they've bought this little simulator, Charlie, where you can tell it goes a bit up and down. I don't know if you've actually seen it, Charlie, but there's a simulator thing.
Yeah.
It looks like it's bouncing, like it's actually got proportion. And I think you can actually go inside it as well. So it's quite relevant to what we see today. I can't remember. I can't remember where I found it, but I know it's there somewhere, Charlie. But it's quite funny to look at as well.
Yeah, and the Goodwood Festival of Speed continues over this weekend. We also have action from Glastonbury as well. We can go and listen to, obviously, the latest concert over there. Big performers. We also have Elton John performing, I think, Hyde Park or Glastonbury as well. So, yeah, plenty of action from music festivals across this country this weekend, and also Goodwood Festival of Speed. Please go and check that out, guys. I'll gather the full results for you tomorrow. Now we're going to move on to Charlie's good news. I think we're going to talk this week, sticking with the motorsport theme, about the new F1 game again. Now, the reason I want to talk to you about the game again is because I think the game launches on the 1st of July, which is actually next week. Friday next week, we get to see F1 22, not F1 2022, F1 22, guys, because, of course, it's now EA Sports that have taken over and merged with Codemasters to create the game. They've collaborated with partnerships, and we've now got more of a closer look, guys, at the new game, which is set to debut next week. Now, as far as what I can gather, this game is going to be a huge investment for F1. It's going to be available on the PS4. Here we go, guys. Finally get to see more information about the game being released. So I'm going to go over it, guys, what you can expect from the new F1 22 game. So Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton will be the joint highest rated drivers in the official game. The second F1 game, sorry if that can come off my screen, since EA took over, will once again feature the full access of My Team career mode, where gamers can create their own 11th team on the F1 grid. After the previous driver ratings drew criticism, Codemasters said it changed the algorithm so it stays more representative current drivers of the current form and less right legacy. And also there's a new experts. The panel decide the scores. Anthony Davidson, David Croft and Alex Jakes, all part of Sky Sports or F1's broadcasting output, have been chosen to help from the ratings. Each driver has an overall rating as well for sub-ratings, experience of racecraft and awareness. 2021 champion Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton both been given overall rating of 94. And it goes down to the bottom at Guan Yu Zhou with, or Zhou, should I say Zhou Guan Yu, as you call him now, with 70.
Oh, come on.
So,
He doesn't deserve to be the lowest, knowing him. I mean, he's been all right, actually. I don't think he deserves to be the lowest. I put Nicholas Latifi above him.
Yeah, trust me, as well. So they were all based at the end of the Monaco Grand Prix as well. There was also going to be additions to the Miami Grand Prix circuit that is coming out as well. It also is also showing you guys how the new cars are going to be unveiled for the game as well, because obviously work was in progress the last time we covered this. But we've got more of an idea now. This is what the cars will look like on the game. I have to say they actually look pretty authentic, if you ask me. The fact that you can see that, especially this Ferrari here, I think it's the SF22 or something, can just see, S21, you can just see the realistic effects of all the regulations being added in there. So it's really nice to see it. It also looks like there's going to be new touches. Natalie Pinkham as a co-commentator as well. And that's going to be an addition. There's also touches like audio using the real headset, the team race engineers. There's also developers who are also using mics to announce what they're very closely in use to accurately stimulate radio broadcast. Okay, so if you're on radio, this is what you're going to get. Proper team radio actually broadcasting where's going to happen. I'll tell you what, guys, this game looks brilliant. Also features improved driver sound modes, authentic broadcast mics, and a 33-song soundtrack. So they're already sort of going on Spotify and playing their own records of F1.
It's very like. Yeah, that's very...
Yeah.
That's something that EA would... That screams EA.
Trust me. And yes, the game will be coming out next Friday. And Zach, do you think, in your own view, would you buy this game when it comes out next week?
Oh yeah, I would buy this game, but I sort of don't really use my PlayStation as much. I don't have a PlayStation 5 as well. I don't really have the time, to be fair, to be playing PlayStation 5 games and always focus on the PC or anything like that. I play like sort of Euro Truck and those sort of things. And yeah, I mean, I would, if I had a PlayStation 5 and I had the option to buy F1 22. Yeah, absolutely, Charlie, I would buy it.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll hear Lando Norris's reaction when he actually properly plays the game. Are some of the F1 drivers, Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, George Russell? Oh, I'm talking about the times when, and even Alex Albon. Remember the times during the COVID lockdown when we all saw them guys on Twitch streaming?
Oh, brilliant!
Oh, I loved it. They always made us with great entertainment. It was brilliant. So yeah, I wonder what they're going to do. Virtual racing, maybe? I can't tell you on that one. But yeah, that's F1 22 launching next Friday. So please, guys, keep up to date with that. Now it's time to talk about the latest news from the world of papers. Actually, before we do, let's cover e-scooters very quickly, because as I said, guys, earlier on, I was involved in an accident the other day with my car. I'm thankfully okay. because I did get hit by a cyclist. But I want to talk to you guys tonight about e-scooters and in general safer cycling routes on British roads. Now, Southend-on-Sea has a cycle route right on the promenade, and it has a dedicated cycle lane which is away from the road that both bikes and e-scooters can use. This news is certainly going to be very interesting when we debate safer cycling routes. Should cyclists be given safer routes to use to improve traffic, to reduce traffic congestion and make spaces more greener? Zach, what do you make to this news? Because obviously e-scooters and cyclists are quite a danger to Britain's roads.
Yeah, I always think, Charlie, that I think we should always produce more rules to make cycling better and safer, Charlie. I think that's clear to me. There's obviously some situations where you can blame the scooters and cyclists for some of the rules. But I think for me is that we should be building more cycle routes. And I can't understand it, right, Charlie, when we complain about cycle routes being built in London and complain about Sadiq Khan. Yet this is exactly the sort of thing that needs to be built to make cycling safer. Because you'll probably find out, Charlie, that more people are going to be cycling in the future. No doubt about it, Charlie. The cycling is just going to increase. And people are going to use scooters and other non-walkable transport ways apart from cars to be able to do these sort of things. So I think cycle lanes, more stringent rules about e-scooters, that's something I think, Charlie, that needs to be in action and considered.
And does that make of this news?
Yeah, go on.
Well, I know it's an old article, but obviously this article here says that Northern Ireland riders won't benefit from Westminster move to legalise them from public road. What do you make to this article?
Yeah, I mean, I understand. I think to legalise them, I think as long as they're treated in the same rules as cyclists, then I don't see a problem. But obviously, they need to. First of all, you need the drivers that need to behave themselves, Charlie. But also, you need cars to follow the rules as well. And I think they should be put into cycle lanes potentially, Charlie. I think they should be put into cycle lanes. If there is available for cycle lanes, they should be put into cycle. They should be follow cycle rules as well. In my opinion, they shouldn't be on the same lane as say cars if there's a cycle lane, Charlie. In my view,
yeah. And just from personal experience, I mean, I wasn't hit by an e-scooter. I was hit by a cyclist, and you get people that don't wear, like some people going around. I watched a video the other day of someone in Australia who actually died after being hit by a bus in the car and had his earphones on. It shows you that cycling is extremely dangerous, and these cyclists put themselves out there at risk every day. Simon Cowell is an example of a man who basically nearly lost his life after going over handlebars on a bicycle. So we really have to take note that cycling is dangerous. And in my view, we need to create... I know I'm going to sound crazy about this, guys. I actually think we do need safer cycling routes. I really do. Being a motorist myself, I want people to cycle safely. I don't want people to be putting themselves in harm's way, going out on the road and potentially, because there's been people out there that have been, look at some of the guy in Australia that have died from being knocked over by cars and buses are horrible. Buses can cut these guys up. It's really important, guys, that you take consideration in this, because as I said the other day, guys, I was involved in an accident. Thankfully for myself, I'm okay. As I'm speaking to you guys tonight, I was a bit shaken, and my car is no longer with me now for a few days. So I'm relying on public transport myself, and I'll be relying on getting around in a different way. And I think that's the future. It seems to me that public transport will become more popular soon. So yeah, this is more interesting, guys. So that's all I'm going to say on the subject tonight of safer cycling routes. let's go, guys, and have a look what's happening in the papers, because I think we now need to talk properly about what is actually happening, because the papers are more important. Now, let's have a look and see if there's any papers that have been released for tomorrow. Let's have a look now. Oh, the 26th of June. Yes, quite a few papers have actually been released, but what I've just checked now. Let's get them up, guys. Okay, right, here we go. So the Sunday Express, or Sunday Express as we call it, goes for the headline crackdown on militant unions. The Attorney General says it's time to take on left-wing radicals. Strikes are kicking in the teeth for struggling firms, warn ministers. The Daily Star goes, and I quote this now, probably the funniest headline of the week. Posho tennis fans told no romps in Wimbledon woods. No balls, please. Tennis fans have been cautioned not to sneak off the sets during Wimbledon's event there. The Sunday Telegraph goes for Prime Minister to impose steel tariffs to win back Red Wall. And the Observer goes for the Prime Minister's plan for a third term delusional. Is Boris Johnson planning to fight back as Prime Minister despite waning popularity? And at the bottom there, Greta Thunberg makes an appearance at Glastonbury's talk about climate change. Zach, what do you make to the latest papers being released at the moment for Sunday?
Right. So we've got a few more as well. I'll go through them in a minute as well. But Sunday Express, let's start with that. Crackdown on militant unions. Yes, Charlie, this week it's all been about the rail strikes. Tuesday, Thursday, and today there's been rail strikes across. We have the Sunday People's just coming as well. We'll come to that in a minute. Sunday, the Sunday Express crackdown on militant unions. Yes, Charlie, there's been the train strikes all week, Charlie. Haven't there been? People have been unable to get to places this week because RMT union have walked out. Mick Lynch has been doing quite the broadcast rounds over the last few days, Charlie, and getting drilled by journalists and actually drilling journalists themselves. I'll give you an example, Charlie, of a time where Mick Lynch went on Piers Morgan and they talked for 3 minutes about a Facebook profile pic about, I think it was a character out of Thunderbird, and was deemed the most evil man in the world. Okay, that's really the priorities of what the conversation is about. But yes, the Attorney General is saying it's time to take on left-wing radicals. I don't know what they mean, she means by that. To be fair, Charlie, because it says, if I remind, let's look at it. Says here as well. Boris Johnson has been urged not to give an inch to striking rail staff amid fears of congestion in the industrial action would grind the economy to a halt. In words, Charlie. Now, keep in mind, Charlie, obviously, it's not just the train unions are potentially going to strike as well. We've heard potentially like the National Teachers Union as well, Charlie. They may, if they don't get a pay rise, they may well ballot their members for action, Charlie. That's quite something. The other day as well, we had the news that the British Airways staff, Charlie, from the GMB are going to go on strike as well. They voted for industrial action by 91%. It's quite something, I have to say, Charlie. Their members voting to strike over the summer holidays at maximum impact, Charlie. That'd be quite something. So, yeah, the unions have been out in force, Charlie. And I have to say, Charlie, we're looking at a summer of chaos, potentially. If this happen, if the pay rises don't happen quickly and negotiations, deals don't be done between the government and the unions as well. The Sunday People, let's just start with this one, continue with this one as well, Chloe, because that just came in. I quit for Colleen. This is obviously talk about Wayne Rooney, who's resigned from his Derby County coaching role, Charlie. Inside the Sunday People, apart from not really much given away, apart from real reason Rue walked away from top job at Derby. I think it's to focus on marriage issues potentially as well. Wish Wayne Rooney the best. I think it's a shame he went for his job, Charlie, because I think it was a good job at Derby County whilst he was struggling under the situation. It was absolutely dreadful, Charlie, no doubt about it. Let's move on down, Charlie, I think, if we could, to the Daily Star. This is the most funny one of the week, Charlie, I have to say. No doubt about it. This is the hilarious edition, Charlie. the Daily Star with their comic front pages. And this is actually a serious sentence I'm actually going to read out to you now, Charlie. Tennis fans have been warned against sneaking off for a Humpy Dumpy in the woods near Wimbledon. Cops will be poking around the undergrowth trying to catch couples out for a love game after a dull day watching the bat and ballers. You can think of all the innuendos you can think of in the one sentence of the front page there. They go on with the headline, "No balls, please." I'll accept that down the line, but probably not now. Thank you very much. It's probably not the most apt headline that you ever see, but it's obviously it's the typical Daily Star headline.
And this headline as well at the top, a big one for showbiz fans. Is Simon Cowell planning on bringing the X Factor back in 2023?
Oh, blimey. It's been off for a few years, Charlie. That'll be quite interesting if they do bring that back. It's got a bit tired over the last few years, you must admit, when it was on. It has been on them for the last few years as well. So I like to see it back personally because I've watched the X Factor pretty much every year, Charlie, and I've really enjoyed it. So yeah, it'd be good to see it back if you do bring it back. The Sunday Times goes for PM imposes tariffs.
That's the Telegraph, by the way.
Yeah, power imposes steel tariffs to bring back the Red Bull. Wow, I'm sure the Red Bull really are going to be saying it. This is Boris Johnson may risk a trade war if imposed steel tariffs to protect northern jobs and retake Red Bull seats. I'm really sure, Charlie, what the Telegraph is saying here, that I'm really sure that the Red Bull is really going to be run back by a bunch of steel tariffs. Come on. I mean, it's going to be other matters that's going to write about, Charlie. This may actually, if you look at the front page, Charlie, this may break international trade, WTO rules, Charlie. So if you think Northern Ireland is not enough for breaking trade rules, then, go for the World Trade Organization to just declare war on everybody. This is probably the reason, actually, you think about it, Charlie, why Lord Geidt resigned. Because there's an possible illegal ruling on stuff like this. It's pretty serious, nevertheless, Charlie. He posed steeper new steel charge as part of an effort to win back the Red Bull. He's preparing to hit several developing countries with new safeguarding import limits designed to protect UK manufacturers from flow of cheap steel from overseas. I'm really sure that's really going to win back the Red Bull. Congratulations. I mean, really, come on. That's bad. The Observer. My bad. The Observer goes for PM's plan for a third term delusional. I don't even think it's going to get to a third term, Charlie. If you're asking an honest opinion of me, I don't think he even deserves a second term in office. And if you think to get a third term, yeah, maybe he's right. It is delusional, Charlie. Absolutely deranged, delusional. He ain't going to get a third term. He ain't going to get 3 terms in office. He's not Margaret Thatcher, Charlie. He's nowhere near Margaret Thatcher, unfortunately, as well. I'm afraid it's ridiculous, Charlie. He's not deserving of a second term, let alone a third term, Charlie. It's just all fantasy wishes. And yeah, I bet, trust me, Charlie. I think if you think about it, I don't think he's going to have a majority by the next election at this rate, Charlie, looking at the opinion polling. Another one that came in as well, Charlie, is the Sunday Mirror as well. Prix breaks law in another asylum scandal. Cool, they're all breaking laws everywhere, Charlie. Don't they love it? This is the fact that Prix tells Britain law game over treatment in the asylum scandal. The High Court ruled housing refugees in Shuddy barracks in clinic until 2026 was in breach of the Equalities Act, Charlie. I mean, if you think Rwanda is going to be potentially illegal in the future, now this asylum seeker placement is also legal. I mean, Priti Patel does seem to like wedge fights on this issue, Charlie. No doubt about it. And it's pretty petty, nevertheless, Charlie, as well. No doubt about it. It's petty, it's silly, and it's quite boring, actually. As well, she's continuing this delusion that on a war on migrants is quite interesting, but nevertheless, Charlie, it's the government that seems to stand up to rule law, yet break the law when it comes to in their own way as well, Charlie.
I just want to go through a couple of tomorrow's papers. I won't go through. We've gone through some of them. So the iWeekend earlier went with the abortion ban in the US. That's what we discussed earlier in the show. Savage Javid tell the public truth about the anti-Tory pact, saying that the Labour and Lib Dem should be honest about their pact according to the Daily Mail. Daily Telegraph goes with Boris Johnson faces a new leadership challenge. And the one headline I want to talk about, the Daily Mirror goes with a headline, "Go now. Prime Minister Boris Johnson needs to go now." Interesting headline there from the Daily Mirror.
Not surprising. I mean, the Mirror leans leftwards, Charlie, but yeah, I think he should have been gone ages ago. But these results make him no secure. He won't go, Charlie. Knowing Boris Johnson, he just won't go at all. He'll keep hanging on until the hole has been fully digged, if it comes to that. But yeah, it's quite something, Charlie.
It is, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how Boris gets on. He's not in he's in big trouble. I think if he faces the next election, he's going to go. And it's a big problem because you have all these papers here with Boris bashing headlines. I mean, crackdown on militant unions isn't one of them. But, I mean, this one, delusional, is just something very interesting. And then you've got the rest of the headlines here. Times goes to Prime Minister faces a new Tory threat, being one of them. The Daily Express trying to go for a bit more of a pro-Boris headline with he vowing to fight the next general election and win it.
Right.
And the Guardian goes for Tory grandees tell Johnson after a historic defeat to go. So overall, guys, I'd say the headlines are mixing towards the Prime Minister's leadership, the abortion situation in the United States, and yeah, just in general, a sex ban on Wimbledon. Very so canny indeed. So let's go, guys, now for the final part of the show where we announce the Great British Stars and Red Devils of the week. Now, obviously, I bet a lot of you guys were listening last week to Junior Andre's new hit slide that is now on the charts. We're going to start off with Zach's nominations this week for the Great British Star and Red Devil. Zach, over to you.
Yes. Okay, so I've got to give my ones out now. My star of the week, Charlie, goes to this couple. This is Amanda and Paul Riesel from Florida, Charlie. Now, why is this why am I pointing out these two? Well, they've had a bit of a nightmare, but they've now got married, thankfully. But they've had a bit of a nightmare in the week, Charlie. They were going to go to Scotland, the Isles of Syke, actually, Charlie, to get married, basically, and they had every problem on the way. Including delays, a cancellation and a lost bit of luggage, Charlie. Their trip was meant to be from Orlando to Heathrow. It got rerouted to Philadelphia to Inverness onto site. Then finally arrived at 11 p.m. on the island the night before their wedding, Charlie, having spent a full 72 hours aboard of planes and trapped in airports. What saved their wedding, Charlie, was the local community on the Isle of Syke decided to lend help to this newly wedded couple, Charlie. It's incredible. And there was a bunch of local community appeal to a social media community and even to before breakfast local islanders. It's incredible what this couple went through, Charlie, to try and get their wedding on. So I'm going to give it to Amanda and Paul Russell as the British Stars of the week, Charlie, because they've been quite incredible saving their marriage. The Red Devil this week goes to the US Supreme Court, Charlie, for their decision on Roe v. Wade and the fact that 6 judges are now dictating millions of women in the United States on whether they should or should not have control over their own bodies. Again, Charlie, I'm stick to the bare bone of this. As well, it's been a dreadful week for women, and this is just one of them, Charlie. It's pathetic. It's incredible and pathetic. So the US Supreme Court is the Red Devil this week, and the couple from Florida is the British Star of the week.
I know. So that's all I can say, Zach, and I agree with your nominations. Have you got any honorees to mention?
I do. I think if I can get it up here, it's a sad honorary, but it's also an important one, Charlie. I'm going to give this week honorary mention this week to a very famous presenter, Charlie, Harry Grayton, Charlie. a Look North presenter for 40 years. Also presented the Rugby League Super League show as well, Charlie. He sadly passed away yesterday. I think it was yesterday, Charlie. At the wow, it was a very sad death, Charlie. It was I think 82, 70. I think it's 80. Yeah, 82 years of age, Charlie. He passed away yesterday. As well, he was a brilliant news reader for 40 and presented various of shows across the BBC as well. And his service to local news has been incredible, Charlie. He's worked in Yorkshire, many places as well, and he's been such a part of the community in the local news, Charlie. So, Rip Harry Grayton, he gets my honourable mention this week.
So yeah, I'm going to go for my nominations now for Great British Star and Red Devil. I'm going to say some of my ones are probably interesting and controversial. I'm going to give one of my nominations, the Great British Star, goes to this person here. You might know this guy, or if you don't know this guy, please let me know. This guy is a mechanic, an Australian mechanic. Daniel Scally put on a Herculean effort for the most push-ups in 1 hour, 3,182 whilst all in pain. He surpassed the previous total by 128 by cranking out 51 push-ups every minute for a solid hour. His feat has been officially confirmed as the second Guinness World Record achieved by a 28-year-old following his record-breaking stint last June. He spent 9 hours and 30 minutes in an abdominal plank position. Daniel from Henley Beach had suffered from a condition called complex regional pain syndrome, CRPS, when he was 12 years old. Incredible bravery to see him being out there and really showing support is great. Another honorary mention, and this one is a mention I'm going to give as well. Did anyone, guys, watch Le Mans 24 Hours the other week? Well,
I did.
Certainly did it.
I did bits of it. I did. When it didn't have F1
I'm going to give it to the Toyota Gazoo racing team for winning the Le Mans 24 Hours. Sebastian Buemi finishing first there with Rio Harianka, Brendan Hartley winning that car, with the runner-up being Jose Maria Lopez, Mike Conway, Kamui Kobayashi finishing in second there for Toyota Gazoo Racing. That's my other nomination. The Red Devils now. That was my honorary Red Devils of the week. Now, my Red Devil this week will go to the guy the militant unions, and the guy, one of the guys who runs these rail unions. You all know him. He's been out on news rounds this week. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Mick Lynch, who said that rail workers lauded as heroes in pandemic, but treated as out of fashion. Yes, this guy demands a pay rise from the government, but he is causing unnecessary disruption by shutting down half of our Britain's rail network. Unnecessary disruption. I'm probably going to have to get public transport next week myself, so please do not shut down your rail network. Thank you. Another nomination goes to my honorary nomination goes to the Conservative Party for losing two key by-election results. I have to say this. Sorry that I nominated you this week, because I know there's a lot of MPs in the Conservative Party that I trust. But they are all turning against Boris Johnson, and Boris Johnson this week is one of my nominations. Boris Johnson is in serious trouble. What is he going to do next? Will he go at some point? I don't know. But that's all for my show tonight, the Charlie Tolhurst Show on YouTube. It's been grand to have you guys on tonight. Thank you so much for watching this show live on YouTube. And we'll see you again next week for more action on the Charlie Tolhurst Show. Take care, everyone, and see you next time. Goodbye.